Thanks for inviting me again. I always love to speak here. Just shortly about me, I'm head of laboratory at Cube Biotech. We specialize in membrane proteins. We commercialize a lot of copolymers. We love copolymers, and we also produce resins to purify them. Yes, and today I would like to go a bit into biophysics and show you how we try to make the right decisions before we have to do upscale to get a bit work done quickly. So yes, let me just move this here. We at Cube, we are right now a team of 100+ people, and this is due that we acquired EBA Life Science in the beginning of January. So now we can also provide you with everything streptavidine, streptec-based resins and products. So this is great. It gives us great opportunity to expand our services. And what we also love is to work together with industry and to work together with academics to learn as much as possible about membrane proteins. At least this is my personal opinion. I want to know as much as possible about copolymers, about membrane proteins, different lipid compositions, and all of this, because I find this really, really exciting. Yes, so why is membrane protein purification an issue? I mean, this is the right community to make a really, really short introduction. We all know about copolymers, and we know why we love them and why we do not like detergents so much. I mean, they strip away the native lipid environment, and then you can reintroduce them into several systems. But why do that if you can already go with copolymer nanodiscs, where you can isolate your favorite membrane protein in its native lipid environment? I mean, if you work with detergents, you have a non-lipid environment. This can compromise function and stability. You have higher risks of long timelines in your projects, and it's really, really hard to work with full-length unmodified GPCRs. But with copolymers, this is all possible. You can retain the native host lipid environment. You can retain and preserve function and stability. You can perform SSS body temperature or above. Those copolymers really stabilize very well all sorts of membrane proteins. Therefore, you have lower risk and faster timelines. This is especially crucial in industry. And yeah, you can now work with full-length unmodified GPCRs, and we do this quite a bunch, and it's really, really fun. Yeah, first generation of copolymers, this is where we all started. This is where this community is coming from, and those are still very relevant copolymers. This were the SMAs and the dipmers in the beginning, not much of selection, but now there's a huge variety, and we love variety, and therefore we also commercialize variety. And next to a lot of different SMAs, coming also from nanoscene here, the SMA BZs, we have a lot of dipmers. We have commercialized ASTI from Anton and Henriette Autzen. We have commercialized the ultrasolute amphipoles, which are also great polymers, from Manuela Zonens from Paris. And just last year, we have started or launched our first own copolymer backbone. We're already said in the beginning of this meeting that we just today launched Cubipol Amine and Cubipol PEC. Especially Barry, for you, Cubipol Amine might be really, really nice, because it tackles exactly what you were talking about, that some copolymers are working better in your system than in human or insect systems. So this might be really, really interesting here. So we call this our native MP platform, just to have one quick name, and that everybody knows screening is key, because it really is. I'm going to say this very often in my talk, because I strongly believe in this. So great variety, 32 different polymers, 5 different copolymer backbones, but this also means lots of work screening and finding the right fit. Yeah, I nearly forgot. We also have biotin, fluorescein, and custom modification options. So if you want to do SPR with this and you wish that you have a biotin directly at your copolymer belt, this is also something you can get directly from us. Works wonders. We do this all the time in the lab. SPR is now finally fun. Yeah, it's a long road to the top, even with copolymers. And this starts at the tech choice. You have issues with expression very often. You have to solubilize, you have to purify, go to elution, and then check your protein. And I'm going to concentrate here on this part, solubilization and purification today, and how we make, hopefully, the right decisions in the process. Yes, a few years back, we were also still doing this, and I think a lot of people are still doing this at this day. If you screen with copolymers, people are looking or were looking at solubilization efficiency. But this is a bit of a trap. Because as you can see here, this is a Western blot of a row-tagged ion channel. This is a few years old, these pictures, I think from 2022. And you can see we have a really good signal, and the signal differs throughout these 15 copolymers I picked here. And if we just look at solubilization and then we decide, okay, we pick 14 and 15 look really good, and we go to elution, it's not as good as some hidden champions here. The 1, 2, 4, 5, and 10 work really, really good in elution, but it gives us a false picture in solubilization. So if you want to remember something from this talk, it is go through all the way to the elution. Solubilization analysis where Western blot of is not efficient. It's really not sufficient. It traps you, and then you make the wrong decisions. So we did lots and lots of optimizing. We have now all these different copolymers, and in some cases, like here, it works very well. It looks nicely, it looks pure, it looks beautiful, but it looks beautiful for so many different copolymers. So if in my screening only 1 or 2 work, I know what I want to go with. But if like here 10, 12, 14 are working, then when everything works, what actually works best? It's the big question. And this is where biophysics come in for us, and we use multiplexing optical methods to see behind the curtain. And it's just a fancy word for this device here. We bought it from Nanotemper, it's the Prometheus Penta. And I love it because you can do DLS and nano DSF in very, very little format and in very short time. So we now have a multi-step procedure to really do our analysis. It's a mini-scale purification where, just as I introduced, analyze the Eloids in SDS page and Western blot. Then we do a DLS, and then we do a nano DSF over a temperature ramp. And therefore we can check for aggregation, protein unfolding, melting temperature, turbidity, and all of these fancy biophysics. And then this brings us to step 4, where we can check all of these results together and define a good fit for cryo-EM, for MST, for SPR, and all those nice methods. Yes, but what is all this? Dynamic light scattering, DLS, gives us a look into the determination of the sample homogeneity. It can detect aggregates and estimate the particle size. So we get hydrodynamic radius, the PDI, and size distribution profile. And you can see an example down here, looking really nice, very monodisperse peak, nice size, also looking in a good range. And it's like 12, 13 nanometer. This is also expected for this kind of membrane protein here. And if you see multiple peaks, of course, then you're going to have a heterogeneous sample. Not so nice, except you're expecting this. Some GPCRs in vivo, they can form multimers, and this is also something you're going to observe then. Really, really interesting. And also, if you have a high PDI, generally Nanotemper says above 0.5, suggests aggregation and a mix of species, also something, especially for cryo-EM, what we do not want. And then after the DLS is done, you can same capillaries, just click a button, and then you go into the nano DSF mode, where we can then measure thermal unfolding transitions, and therefore we can assess the protein conformational stability. And we can identify a melting temperature. We can check for intrinsic fluorescence of tryptophan and tyrosine. So if they are hidden and the protein unfolds, you're gonna get an increased fluorescence of tryptophan and tyrosine, because they're accessible. This is a really nice tool to see how our protein is behaving. We can check for aggregation and, of course, for light scattering across the temperature. And there also, we're looking if it has a huge ectodomain, we're expecting a nice transition to see how well are different copolymers stabilizing our membrane protein of choice, and therefore make a good decision. And for this, we teamed up with the Imperiali lab with Greg and Barbara from MIT and Nanotemper. And we also have a full app note available on this. You're going to see it on the last slide if you're interested, or I can also send a link into the chat so you can download it. And I'm just going to briefly show you what we did there. But to really get into the hard details, feel free to check out the app note. And what Greg and Barbara did here, they are working on membrane-associated glycosyltransferases. This is WBAP. There, they already have 2 papers on. They have a native MP-based solubilization protocol, and they also found very quickly and nicely the structure. It's published in eLife. It's down here is the DOI. WBAP is a monotopic phosphoglycosyltransferase from Salmonella, and it's one of our examples with a very small ectodomain. I try to paint in here where the membrane is supposed to be sitting. We have PGLB. It has a way bigger ectodomain, so I'm going to show you what this means later. It's from Neisseria gonorrhoeae, the bifunctional enzyme. And then also very interesting, we have PGLC. It's a very small membrane protein, only 20 kilodalton from Helicobacter, and it only contains a single re-entrant membrane helix, and it can enter and exit the same bilayer phase. So this is also an interesting target. Yes, and so this is what we then usually get, the good, the bad, and the ugly of all the different copolymers here. And for WBAP, you have all the different sizes here. We grade out everything which is bigger or has a hydrodynamic radius larger than 20 nanometer, because this is definitely not going to be anything we want to check in cryo, which was the approach here. We want something small and we want something stable. And you can see that there's a big range. So the SMA 300 here is like 7.5, SMA 200, 9.1. But we also have like the ASTI is 13.25. And what I find really interesting, and I think this is also going to make Gestel very happy, that you can see a huge difference between the BZs here from functionalization rate. The 25, a huge chunk, which is definitely not going to be show us anything nice in cryo. But if we look at the BZ40 here, this looks already way, way nicer. And then you can have already a first checkup here. And we did the same for the PGLB and for the PGLC. I will not go into detail, but you can also see here we grade out some samples, but there's a lot which looks really, really promising already. Okay, then we can take a look at the unfolding events at the nano-DSF. And here you can see that also the size of the ectodomain can play quite a crucial role. If we look at the PGLB here, it has a big ectodomain. We have ASTI 650 and ASTI 1145 here, and you can see there's a big difference. So ASTI 650, it has an inflection point at like 56 degrees, and the cumulant radius really shoots up to more than 1,000. So this is definitely nothing which is stable anymore in higher temperatures. And this can also translate to stability over time. So if you want something which you can store a long time, then you're looking for something which is also quite stable over a temperature ramp. And in this case here, ASTI 1145 would be the better bet. This is of course then also true for turbidity. Also here you can see that the 650 is getting very turbid in higher temperatures, while the 650 is staying nicely. There's not much of a change in the ratio 350 to 330. This just means there's not that many hidden tyrosine and tryptophans in PGLB. It's also protein dependent. If we now look at the WBAP here, which has a smaller ectodomain, we also see only very subtle changes. So this is with ASTI 655 here, and we can see that at right 55 degrees, we have kind of a little thing happening, a little opening and closing event, and that at 75 degrees, we start to get some higher cumulant radii, but also very, very small. So this is a very stable copolymer in this case. If we look at the PGLC, we can see even though it has quite a small ectodomain, because it's also quite a small protein, you can still see definitely differences. Here the two ASTIs, 645 and 55, they behave pretty similarly, but the BZ35 shows us a 10-degree higher stability, which is great to know. So this would definitely be a better bet for long-term stability, even though the particle is also bigger. But this we have to take also with a grain of salt. It's just illusions from a small scale purification. There's nothing sec purified or polished. So this size can also, or will also get a little bit smaller if you polish a sample. But for a first look, it's really, really nice. And then if we now look at the gel, this is something we typically would normally do. You can see a lot of samples look really, really good. This could be something you would pick. Now that you did the biophysics, is something you won't pick anymore. But here, the SMA 200, a really nice sample. Also the SMALP BZ40, really nice sample, or the ASTI 6455, also nice sample. It's something you would take a look at. Yes, and this is what Greg did. He picked the SMA 200. He put directly this illusion he got from the mini screen on the grid, and he was able to get the structure from there. So that's crazy. Didn't even have to do an upscale, didn't even have to do like crazy polishing. Just from there, you see it's also possible, of course, if you're lucky, to get a nice structure from there. And this is what he published. He was lucky indeed there, because I think a lot of you know the struggle that you might not always get a good orientation, a lot of preferential orientation. And this is an example I want to show here you here from our P2X4. We purified this in a lot of different copolymers. All of those copolymers, they looked really, really good in our biophysics, but only sulfocobipol showed us a nice distribution. You can see this here on the heat profile. Ultrasolute 18, very strong preferential orientation. Glycodidma, we couldn't even get a proper 2D structure, very strong preferential orientation. Glycocobipol, I mean, of course, we got bottom views and top views, but side views was a real challenge also here. But with sulfocobipol, we got a very nice view, and we could get a structure of global resolution from to 3.1 angstrom. So this was really, really nice. Yes. And last year, we did more than 100 different targets, all relevant in drug discovery. It's GPCRs, ion channels, SLC, ABC transporters, all of this. And I can really not emphasize enough that screening is really important. The next-gen copolymers, they can be amazing. Sometimes the old classics are working wonderfully and giving you great results. So there is not one copolymer which beats them all. It's really screening is important. And therefore, I'm really, really happy that this community is growing, that this community is giving new copolymers. And of course, we would be also interesting to try them out if you have something. Always really, really exciting. And with this, I want to thank especially Greg and Barbara and Nanotemper for the great collaboration. This here is the title of our app note, and of course, the whole Biotech laboratory team. Yes, thank you very much.